Hey there, Fletcher from All Things Overlanding here, and today I'm going to be talking about this 8 kilowatt diesel heater from H Calory. Now, I've had another diesel heater from H Calory and then several others from other brands, and by far the one that I like the most has been my old H Calory that was the suitcase style. And I'll put a link to that in the description below, as well as a link to this one. It just kind of depends on the form factor that fits best for your uses. But again, I'm going to walk you through this thing. I'm going to show you all the features, everything that comes with it. When it gets a little darker here tonight, I'm going to fire it up. I'm going to run it in my tent tonight, and I'm going to show it to you in action and give you just as much information as I can. So if you want to learn more about this diesel heater and also kind of why I'm switching this in my setup from my old briefcase style, stay tuned.
Understand where it came from, but you got it, my got it. It began in the land of the sandstorm. I fought it, though I wanted everything to do with what you give to me. Loosening my grip.
All right, guys, so as I mentioned in the intro, today I'm going to be talking about this H Calory. I call these PC style because they kind of look like a computer case, right? Like that's what I think of them as. I've seen other people call them that. But so this is the main unit here. And again, I'm going to walk you through everything. When it gets a little darker, I'm going to fire it up. I'm going to run it tonight. So I'm going to show it to you in action, but I'm going to start by kind of just walking you around it. I'm going to show you everything that comes with it. And then I'm going to give you some tips and tricks for these things and talk a little bit about use cases and when one like this makes sense versus one like my old one that's more of a suitcase style that's very portable and meant to kind of be taken in and out of your truck versus, you know, maybe installed, which is kind of where my head goes with this one. But so let's start first by talking about what comes with it. So of course you get the main unit, you get the fuel tank and the cover on it. One thing that I do like about the way that they build theirs is that these are really easy to take off. So there's just these clips, there's two on each side. So if you wanted to quickly remove this top part, it's really easy. Some of the other diesel heaters I've had, they literally use like screws and screw the cover in, but then it's really hard to service it. It's really hard to take it apart. It's hard to kind of get in there and look and see, you know, what's going on the inside. If you ever had a fault or anything like that, or you had a fuel leak or anything, if you needed to service it at all, this makes it really easy to get in there because of these clips at the bottom. Of course, here on the front, you've got your screen, which is going to display everything for you. Now you do, with all these diesel heaters, you do need a power source. And I'm going to walk you through that here in a little bit as well. But when it's plugged in, you can see everything that you want there. It also comes with a remote control that you can take up into your tent, and they have a phone app. So I'll walk you through that a little bit more as well. Now this here is going to be your air output. So this is where this big hose here is going to connect to, and this is where your warm air is going to come out that you're going to run up into your rooftop tent or into your ground tent or whatever sort of setup you're using. If you're sleeping in the bed of your truck, you could, you know, run the warm air out of the unit into the bed of your truck. So that's the unit itself. Then it comes with this little piece, which is actually sort of a kick out for the exhaust. Now on this unit, the exhaust is actually, there's underneath here, there's two tubes. There's the exhaust and then there is the intake. The exhaust is in the front on this unit, and then the back tube is the intake. So you're going to put this little kick out on the front hole that comes out of the bottom of here that's going to kick this out to the side, and then on that you're going to attach your exhaust pipe. Now this can be bent and stuff, so bend it to be, you know, the shape that you need it to be, and then attach it to this little kick out. And then to the end of that, you're going to attach the silencer or muffler. So this just kind of keeps it a little bit quieter, tones it down a little bit so that it's not so loud when it's running at night. If you haven't used one of these before, they basically sort of sound like a of like the wind blowing, the air blowing through the tube, and then sort of a tick, 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 which is just the compression of the chamber in the heater, keeping the air warm. So then, of course, you do get this big tube, which is your output tube. Honestly, I will say they're all like this on all these diesel heaters. These do stretch, so you can stretch them out. It's a little bit tricky, but you can do it. But what I recommend is there's actually like a softer, like a dryer vent type tube that I've used on all my last diesel heaters that you can get in various lengths. So you can get it as long as you want to make it way easier to run it up into your rooftop tent versus kind of messing with this more rigid short one that's kind of hard to use. So I will put a link to that in the description below, but this one does work. If you were going to keep this kind of close, like if you were going to set this, if I set this, let's say maybe up on top of my cab of my truck, and then I ran it right into my door up there, you only need 1.5 feet or 2. So you don't need a ton of space, and this may work fine for you. They do give you this little like air controller vent thing on the end. So you can attach this, and they give you like hose clamps that you can use to attach this all together. Again, I'm going to show you this 3D printed unit. This is something that I bought but I will put a link in the description below to where you can pick one of these up. But it's a guy that 3D prints these. You can actually zip this into the screen of your tent, and then it gives you some control over where the air is going. It's just a really nice thing, but then it's got an adapter there that allows it to work with these tubes. That would be another upgrade that I would recommend, is upgrade your tube and upgrade your output. But again, you don't have to. These work just fine. But if you want to be a little bougie like me and you want to have, you know, something that's a little bit cooler and a little bit more user-friendly and gives you a little bit more control over the air, then something like that may work for you. Now this thing here is sort of your intake filter, I guess you would call it, although there's not really anything in there. It's just to kind of keep big debris and stuff out. And then this is your intake tube. So again, underneath of here, the main unit, there are two tubes that come out of the bottom of the diesel heater. The front one is your exhaust, the back one is your intake. You put this tube into that intake, you put this filter on the end of that, and then you run this the opposite direction. So like I will run my exhaust out of here towards the front, and then I will run my intake out towards the back so that I'm getting clean air and not breathing the exhaust. Now, in addition to that, you also get a really nice user's manual, which does help explain some of the things. Also talks about error code. So I do keep these in my truck with me usually when I go. So just in case if I got an error code, I could look it up and sort of troubleshoot. And then you get a bunch of hardware. So like I mentioned, you get some hose clamps and things like that. So you can use that to sort of secure everything together, put, you know, this end cap on this, to put this on this. You would use a hose clamp around that. A lot of the times though, I just kind of loosely fit them, and then it's not like I'm moving this thing. Once I kind of get it set up, it doesn't move a whole lot, and then I usually can just let it go all night without having to secure it with the hose clamps. But you do get the hose clamps if you want to really make sure that it's secure. Then they also provide this power cable, which is really nice. It's a good length, but it's got a positive and a negative on it. So you could just plug this into like a dual battery setup, put it on your posts of a battery. You could, you know, there's a million ways that you could do it. But one thing that I have learned is that this plug is the sort of same style as things like a 12-volt refrigerator. So what I actually do, because when it's cold enough to use a diesel heater, it's often cold enough that I don't really need to run the fridge. I will just pull my cord from the back of the fridge and I will plug it into the diesel heater from my dual battery, and then that's how I'll run the diesel heater. So I actually don't generally use the cord that comes with it. I just reuse my fridge cord for my diesel heater because I'm not using my fridge because it's winter. So just a little tip there. If you've already got a refrigerator that you keep in your vehicle, like mine is in there 24/7, you can just unplug that and then use that cable to run your diesel heater, which is really nice. But so now let's talk a little bit about use case and why you would maybe pick this style versus the briefcase style. The reason I had the briefcase style is I actually used to mount my old H Calory up here on this slide. So then I would pull this slide out to get easy access to it, and I could access it right here, and then I could put it straight up into my tent. The thing about that though is I have an open bed, right? So because of that, I have that briefcase style because it helps keep the weather out. It's kind of all enclosed, and it was portable. So it has a handle on the top, and you could grab it and take it out of the truck when I'm done with the trip, put it in the garage. Next time I'm going out, put it back up on there and be ready to go. The reason that I'm switching to this one is I'm in the process of getting a cap. And so when that comes out, I'm going to be switching to that. And when that happens, then this is going to be permanently mounted. Like I don't want to have to take things in and out. I want to just always have this because I mostly go fall and winter camping. So I just want to have the diesel heater probably mounted like over here in the side of my truck and just attached in there and ready to go. Hardwired and always ready to go. So again, if you're going to be like putting this in a van or an RV, or if you're going to be sort of building it in, there are holes down here where you can secure this to like the floor, let's say, of your RV, or to the top of my drawer system, or wherever you wanted to mount it. You could secure this thing in place and just leave it there. And then, you'd have to hook up your hoses and stuff, or you could run those and just permanently run those too if you wanted to, and have your exhaust exit somewhere outside of the vehicle, and you're good to go and you're always set up. So again, if you wanted something that is going to be more permanently mounted, that's going to be inside of like a cap or an RV or a van or something, this would be a good option. If you want one that you can throw in the bed of your truck, go on a trip, throw out on your tailgate, or mount to a slider like I did, then the briefcase style may be better. But they both are basically the same units. It's just a different form factor. So hopefully that helps a little bit if you're kind of trying to decide between types of diesel heaters. All right, guys, so as you can see, it is getting dark. Sun's starting to go down, so I thought now would be a good time to test fire the diesel heater and just kind of warm up the rooftop tent here. But so I wanted to just show you, so I have unplugged my fridge. Okay, so this is my fridge cord coming down here, just normal old fridge cord that I use with my IceCo APL 55. And then on the back here, you can see the plug for the diesel heater, and boom, plug in the fridge cord, and voila. we've got power. So again, just wanted to sort of drive that home that you can just use a regular fridge cord to power your diesel heater. And again, because of their sort of dual nature, you're only going to probably be running your diesel heater when your fridge isn't really needed, when it's cold, right? So anyways, one other thing to point out is, as you can see here, I've put black RTV over this little vent hole in the lid, okay? And you may be asking why. When transporting this thing, right, it was riding in the back of my truck. If you leave that hole in there, then diesel fuel sloshes out everywhere and it makes a mess. So what I do is I put a little bit of RTV in there just to seal that up so that the diesel heater doesn't leak while it's in transport. And then what I do is when I'm going to run the diesel heater, I just vent the cap. You can get things that have like a one-way valve or something. There are some ways that people have put like a valve in the top that won't let the fuel out, but will let air in. But I don't know what those things are, and this works just as well. So I'm literally just going to take the cap off, leave it still kind of covered, but just leave a little vent there, just so that it doesn't create a vacuum, right? So it doesn't get stuck as the fuel starts to pull into the diesel heater. So just a tip. So you can leave with that hole, but I still would have it choke some. So when you had the hole and it was spilling diesel fuel, it still didn't seem to vent well enough to run very well. So again, I just sealed the hole up, and then I just vent it, and we're good to go. So now that we are ready to go, so again, I'm just going to push the power button right here. I'm going to hold it. You hold it for about 3-4 seconds, and it's going to start to go through its preheat cycle. So now I am just going to test fire this, and then after I stop recording, I'll run the tube up to the tent and stuff to heat that up. But obviously, you would probably want that done beforehand. So right now I can feel cold air coming out of here, and it does show a little 2-minute timer to indicate that it's in its sort of warm-up firing cycle. So what you want to do is you just kind of want to keep your eye on it. Like all these diesel heaters, the beautiful thing about a diesel heater is that it's clean, dry, warm air. So versus like a propane heater or anything like that, these units are really nice because what they're going to do is they're going to use that diesel fuel to burn and basically create dry, warm air. So now you can kind of hear it starting to tick, which is a good sign. I'm going to run you around to the front of my truck, and I'll show you how much power this is drawing too, just in case you're curious. So if we look at my red arc, it's drawing almost 10 amps right now. So on startup, it's going to draw more. But then once it gets going, then that should die down to maybe like 3 or 4 amps is typically what I've seen on these things. But at startup, that's where you're going to have the most power consumption and the highest power need. So now that air is starting to get warm. It's warming up. Again, really, really important that you vent this because otherwise it may run for like 15, 20, 30 minutes. And then it's likely going to starve out and die. Also equally important, tomorrow morning when you wake up, you need to make sure you put that lid back on, or you're not only going to lose your lid, but you're also going to spill diesel all over the back. That's the nice thing about these units, though. If they aren't permanently mounted, then you can, having it like on the tailgate, like I can't forget, like I have to move this thing anyways tomorrow morning, so I'm going to see this, I'm going to put the lid back on, and then I'm going to put it away. So that air is starting to get warm. Now, just a note, you hear this noise right now, I also don't have the exhaust on or the intake or anything. I'm just letting it run because I just wanted to test fire it. But so then I'm going to let it run a little bit, and then I'm going to shut it down, let it go through its cool down. And then later on, when it gets later, it's only about 6:30 right now. When it gets later and I'm ready for bed, I will actually run the diesel heater to heat the tent. So that's why it's a little loud right now. It doesn't have any muffler on it. It doesn't have an intake on it. It's just pretty much open. I've got the little elbow on it, which is why it's so loud. But there's warm air coming out of the elbow from the diesel heater. This air is getting warm now too. Now you do have arrows on here, so you can hit up and down to adjust the heat. So like, you know, you could, if you wanted it at the lowest, which is about, usually what I keep it at is just on the first level. That's usually plenty of heat. This one will go up to 6. I mean, on really, really cold nights, like negative temp nights, I'd maybe run it at like 3, but then it's almost too hot. Like it's almost uncomfortably hot in the tent. So I usually keep it at like 1 or 2, honestly, is what I usually keep them at. But so now it's running. So it is pumping out hot exhaust fumes there, and it's got hot air coming out of here, and it's running great. One other note is it is extremely important for longevity of these units that you shut them down properly. So what I mean by that is you never ever want to unplug them and just shut them off, because then it won't allow it to go through its cool down process, and that could damage the diesel unit. So to shut it down, all you want to do is just hold the power button again for a few seconds, and it's going to say off. But then you hear that it's going to keep going, right? So it's going to run through now its cool down process. See, it's showing like a little blue fan. So now, by holding the power off button and giving it a few minutes to kind of go through its cool down process, it's going to shut itself down. It's going to make sure that it goes through the cycles that it needs to and cools itself efficiently. And it's going to protect your unit. So you can hear it. It's gotten a lot quieter, but it's still running because it's going through the cool down process. So again, that's very important. So biggest tips I can give you: seal your cap up so you don't spill diesel, vent it when you're running the unit, never ever unplug the power, make sure that you use the off functionality either in the app or with the remote controller or with the power button on the unit, and then give it plenty of time to cool down. Also watch out, the exhaust gets pretty hot, but it does cool really fast. So just before you grab that with your hand to put the stuff away, make sure that it's cooled all the way off. But then that's pretty much it. It's really that simple. I mean, you hold the power button for a few seconds to turn it on. You let it run. You can adjust your heat levels with this stuff, or again, it has a remote, which I actually clipped mine inside of my drawer in here, so it's actually hanging back here. Or the app. You can also use the Smart app, which is pretty self-explanatory and works pretty well for controlling it. But just make sure that you hit the off button and you power it off and let it go through its cycle, because you can still hear it's kind of going right now. All right, guys, so that'll do it for the H Calory diesel heater. I hope that was helpful information for you. If it was, click that like button down below. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, make sure to click that subscribe button, click the bell to be notified when new videos drop, because I do a couple videos every week, usually like a podcast for newbie overlanders, and then gear type stuff, do-it-yourself stuff, modifications, vehicle modifications, anything to do with overlanding, budget stuff. That is what I'm here for. So if you want more of that, make sure to click that subscribe button. As I mentioned, in the description below will be links to this diesel heater, the other one, and then also that tube that I talked about, and that 3D printed zipper attachment thing. So I'll put links to all that stuff to make it as helpful and easy to find as possible. Also, there's going to be links to all my social channels, so wherever you want to come hang out, I'd love to have you. There's a join button below this video that's just kind of a passive way to support the channel, get you early access to the videos and some other perks. So if you want to check that out, click on that join button. If you want a more active way to be involved with all things overlanding, there's also a link to my Patreon group where we've got a 24/7 Discord. We chat about our gear and our rigs all the time. We do a once-a-month Zoom call, and we're even meeting up in person once or twice a year to kind of sit around a fire and drink a beer. There's also a link to my website down below where I've got funny overlanding camping theme patches and stickers. So if you're into that kind of stuff, check that out. There's also ATO merch down there. And then last but not least, there is the Newbie Overlanders Facebook group, which is totally free to join. Over 20,000 awesome members, but no bullying like the big groups. We're all just trying to help each other get out and explore more. So if that sounds good, check that out. But again, thanks so much for watching. Hope that was helpful. Check out the links in the description down below to find one for yourself, and we'll see you next time.